There we go. There we go. I think we're live on all the things. Let's take a look. Looks like some things are a little glitchy. Welcome back, Monifa. It's fabulous to see you again.
Of course. And yes, it's always fabulous to show up for Verve Vision with Susie. It's
Sovereign
my fun space.
spirits. Mastering midlife. Mastering technology, despite the fact being we are in the shadow of this Mercury brewing up his retrograde. In spite of everything that's going on, we're going to take a look at the transits because there's a lot. Girlfriends, get your helmet. And we've got so much we want to talk about today. So I am thrilled to be back for our final Thursday of the month, our live stream leading up to our book club next week. Monifa, how have you been this past month? What did you do that was exciting?
Oh, for me this month, well, I feel like mostly it was just getting all the things done. I feel like I got a lot done. I thought I'd get more done publicly, but it was more behind the scenes. I
Doing
was
some
like,
roots work.
I don't know if everybody would believe me when I said I got a lot done, but I know that I did, right? And that's satisfying to me. But yeah, it is. It's been kind of a lot of work, like kind of the feet running beneath the Flintstone cars, like everything's still on top, and then the feet.
Top speed. We are making progress. Yeah, sometimes the visible progress doesn't match the effort that has been put in, but as long as we are chipping away at it, I think we're moving in the right direction. It might not be a linear path. I usually say mine is concentric circles, so it's all movement. We are learning lessons.
Yeah, I think that's going to be our ultimate statement for the month is that it's all movement. It's like there's no consolation prize. That's it, y'all. That's like it's all movement. If you're moving, you're good. You're good. You're good. And even in rest, there's still movement. So, and that's so fun. We were actually I was having that conversation with somebody this past month that even in stillness, there's still movement. Um, and that there's a still point in perpetual motion. That's another thing. A lot of people don't realize like that they think perpetual motion is literally perpetual. And it's not. It isn't. There is always a still point, and then it will wind down like everything else. So I think that's what we're going to probably be talking a little bit more in depth in a few minutes about. How about you?
Yeah.
How was your month? How does it roll through for you?
It has been a great month. Lots of things happening. I wish I could say with as much conviction as you, I got a lot done, but I've done a lot. I got to run off on a little getaway with a girlfriend. And so spent 5 days in San Miguel de Allende. So like you said, even in the stillness, there's a lot of movement. And that was just food for the soul. I mean, amazing food, incredible people, thinking with that other language side of my brain for a few days, really stretching and savoring new experiences. It was really terrific. And I think I mentioned to you, we're going to get into books, all things books in just a minute. But I read a fluffy little novel on the way to my vacation. And I don't know the last time I read something nonfiction, right? Because I'm always learning. I have a love of learning, lifelong learner, and I'm always trying to add tools to the toolkit. And it was nice to just check out for a bit and really just dive into a juicy story.
Oh man, yeah. All of the brave ones. I feel like I get to be amongst the brave ones. And they're always in the nonfiction. I have to move back and forth. I have phases for everything. I have phases where I'm only interested in like one topic of nonfiction and just like in this through line. I want all the answers immediately now. And then I have my like what world, books, just like just give me some fantasy, give me some romance, give me a mystery that's stupid, like just I don't want to think anymore. Those are my little extremes that I like to go into.
I love it. In all things, balance, right? And if you're catching us live, if you give StreamYard permission to view your posts, then we can see your comments while we're here in the studio. If you're catching us on the replay, please leave us a comment anyway. We'd love to hear your thoughts or questions or feedback that we can put towards future shows. And if you follow Monifa Harris's YouTube page, then you will get notifications when we plan these live streams. If I get things correct and can make sure things are all in line, I got my time a little bit wrong today, so we're glad to see you. If you are joining us live, happy to have you with us. And so in the end of our conversation, we've already dropped a few little tantalizing tidbits, but we are going to take a look at Byron Katie's process of self-inquiry, what she calls the work. And initially, as Monifa and I were mapping out what we want to talk about and when, we had a completely different book on our agenda for this month. And at the top of this month, we looked at everything we had going on and everything life has been serving up. And this felt so much more important and relevant. And since we made this decision, Monifa, I don't know about you, but life has been serving up all kinds of examples of how important this method of inquiry is. And so I'm really excited to dig into Byron Katie's books as we get towards the end of our conversation today.
Yes, yes. It's going to be very deep. That's what we can promise you. It's so interesting because like the book, the legitimately what we have put on the website is Loving What Is, but there are other editions where she talks about the work and kind of about what's behind the work or what is the concept of the work better explained, maybe even evolved in the next edition. And so we have been exploring over there too. So we'll have some little kind of insights that Susie has picked up since delving into the next edition. So it'll be nice. It'll be a nice round idea of what this work is.
Yes, yes. And then always we follow up with our live stream podcast. Next Thursday will be our book club conversation. So if you want to join us in the book club, we would love to have you. You can learn more about what that is, where we'll be meeting next Thursday. Join us live in a Zoom room for a conversation about these books that Byron Katie has shared and her work, and it's also relevant. So really excited to dig a little bit deeper and really see how it's relevant to everybody next week. Okay, so Monifa, you were talking about, you've got your 2 forays, what you love to read. You've got your brain enriching tool and, widening reading, and you've got your fantasy, your wild escape books. What lately has been standing out for you? What have you been enjoying?
Oh, well, so many, but of course I have to mention the book Ching by Annabelle Wen. So that is my delve deeper into what isness, because I do the gene key stuff. And so the gene keys, the principle of the 64 is from the I Ching. And there's a lot of that information in there. It's actually called the ability to transform in here. It's also considers itself to be the ability to transcend the 3D reality. That's defined in the scripts of the I Ching. So it's really the basis of a lot of the stuff that we're doing nowadays with human design and all that kind of stuff. So foundational and necessary. I highly recommend it. And it's brilliantly done, especially for anybody who's into magics or alchemy or all of the beautiful fun things that we get to play with energy concepts and spirituality. So yeah, highly recommend that one.
This lightweight little weekend tome, that looks like a pretty significant book, but you have shared with me insights that you've gained from Annabelle Wen over the years. And I think she's one of our modern day sages and mystics, really combining the really old schools of wisdom and making them applicable today. So I think it's brilliant. And I'm so excited with this new work that she has released. I know you've been waiting for it for a long time.
I know. When she announced it, I was like, oh my gosh, gosh, I've got to get it. I'm still trying to get her book preceding this, which was like, I think Dallas Magic. Or,
Mm.
yeah, I think that's what it was called. And yeah, so it's like, she's brilliant. And then of course I already have her holistic tarot book, but that one's digital, so it's not as fun. This one is massive. I think they're all pretty big though. She's a talker. She's a lawyer. So
Right?
it comes across, I think, in her the way she will also is willing to argue all the sides and willing to have that conversation. Yeah.
Love
That's
that.
what I
Love
love.
people who really operate from both sides of their brain, right? Left brain, right brain, bringing
Well,
it together.
I think I'm the functional person. Like I want to see what you're doing with it in real life. And she is definitely like applied to real life lady. Like she puts in the work with her creativity and her drawing and all of that she feels is a necessary dynamic of like evolving spirituality, self, and possibility to shift things in real life, you know? So yeah, I think you know how I get about the people that I like to listen to, Susie.
Hold that up one more time. Let people see it. Benabel Wen's I Ching book.
Yeah,
This
it's
lightweight little reference that
stunning.
she's just shared. It really is beautiful.
Yeah,
She does
it's
beautiful
a
work.
huge book, but it's like because she has all this great, all the gray part is, oops, can you see it? All the
There
gray
it is.
part is the hexagrams. So each
It's
hexagram
like a
has a good
complete reference.
2 pages, 2.5 pages. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, some of the mathematics, like, numerology has always been kind of like, numbers are too consistent. Um, but like, like how do you read something that is either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 or 9, right? Like, it's all the same to me in a lot of ways. And like, how do you know what to add for what and all this? I guess it all matters. But anyways, this is like the complex version of that. But it tells you why, like it tells you the yin yang of things, like why energy is alternating and what is happening, like things that people shouldn't know 2,000 years ago, supposedly in our education about energy and dynamics of energy. Are so prevalent in the work itself, like just in the building of the hexagram itself. It's
Hmm. We might have some more mind blown moments as the show goes on today. You should have seen us warming up, like we were in the soup. So if your thoughts are swimming right now, we can blame our good friend Mercury. We'll take a closer look at that in just a
well, you
minute.
bring up your food. Like, what was the book that you read on your vacation? I want to
I
know
will.
where the sun and the relaxation. What was that about? I want to
Well,
see
I was telling Monifa, so I just as I went on vacation, I had Byron Katie's um, Loving What Is, and I've made good progress on that, but I just wanted a fluffy novel. And I ended up reading The Cypress Maze by Fiona Delpy, which was a lovely, like set in two times now in 1944, step back in time, post World War II era, just a really juicy story with great characters. But also lately, I had the great experience to go and see Elizabeth Gilbert speak recently here in San Diego. She was in town for a writer symposium, and I love her book, Big Magic, which is nonfiction, but great for anybody who is creative or wishes they felt more creative. And I picked up her book, her newest novel. She's got a new memoir coming out soon, her third memoir, but her latest fiction, I believe, is City of Girls, which I'm really excited to read, but it was just too much paper for me to fit in my carry-on bag. I was trying to pack to the max, and so that one had to wait. But as we were talking, I remembered what Liz shared, and I don't think this has come up on the show, and I think this is so important, especially in light of everything that is going on. Folks, if you are feeling it too, leave a comment and let us know how this is landing, if it doesn't feel relevant. But one of the things that Liz shared when she was speaking with this auditorium full of fans, readers, book nerds like me, is her desire, her passion to see a movement of relaxed women. And even if you don't know us very well yet, I think you know that that's something we can get behind. And
Yeah.
she was really talking about the benefits of relaxation and using so many of the words and the points that I've used in talking about stress over the last few years. You know, when we're really stressed out, we have tunnel vision. We're laser focused on what is the issue, what is our point of stress. When we are relaxed, just think about how that feels. When we're relaxed, we have all of this peripheral vision open to us again. We have access to everything that's in our environment. We are responding instead of reacting only to one particular situation that's going on. And when we are aware, when we can take in everything that's happening, we are better prepared. We have better access to our resources. We have better ideas and solutions and opportunities to collaborate with other people that we can work with. And there were other wonderful points that she made that I might dig into another time. But I just thought that was so powerful that a woman with her voice, with her platform, with her audience of book lovers, both fiction and nonfiction, that that this is what she really feels is important right now. And I think it's something that I feel a lot of people yearning for. Don't you?
Mm. Absolutely. With all the changes that have been going on and the women who get things done everything every day, it really is that juxtaposition of like how much are we allowing, and like how we were taught not to allow. And so having somebody that with that level of authority and a voice to say, relaxing is the goal. Like that is just like that feels so yummy. It's like, I love
Yes.
you, Elizabeth Gilbert.
Thank you for picking
Thank
up the
you.
torch. Yeah, no more stress and overwork is a badge of honor. How many extra hours you put in at the office, how much you shorted yourself on sleep this week. No more. We are unsubscribing
Yeah.
from that.
Yep, the list of everything you got done and why you're so busy. So my foo-foo version of book is You Only Die Twice by Brynn Kelly. So it's basically it's basically one of those kind of supernatural romance mystery. It's like it's right down my alley of ways to like unplug.
Bring in some
And
fantasy.
yeah, it was so fun because it's about this teacher as well. Well, this one actually, it's actually not. It feels fantastical because it basically she wrote a book that turns out to be real spy thriller. Hey, Pat. Um,
Our fan
so
Pat. Great to hear from you, Pat. You drive safe, but yeah, we're gonna come back to everything that's in the microwave right now.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That was a book that kind of took me. I was just like, I had so much fun with it because it was like she had a crush on the character that she wrote about and didn't realize was a real person until life came to greet her at school when she's teaching. You're supposed to be teaching. So it is so fun. It's like
It is real.
adventure for people who would rather not have any.
Interwoven. I love those
Yeah.
interwoven storylines where it unfolds and you really get to have fun with the characters. I love that kind of development.
Exactly. And like all the excuses to do the things you never said you thought you would never do, that, can come up when you have to adjust. Wow, that's relevant because, the astrology for this April is very much
Da-da-da-da-da.
about rolling with the unexpected. And that's really what the storyline of this book was about, and then how you get to meet the fullness of who you are by choosing what you're gonna what you're gonna have a new experience of. Like so that's pretty cool how that works out.
It's all synchronicities, right? There are no coincidences. But yes, there's been a lot of influences going on lately. And I know a lot of my friends, I've heard from Pat too, like, what is happening? Is it me or is it it? And we just had a full moon in Libra, a lunar eclipse. We've got a solar eclipse coming before, well, after our book club, before we get together in April to have our next live stream. There's a lot happening up there in those stars, and everybody's love-hate relationship with Mercury is about to fire off again. So, Monifa, please tell us what to be on the lookout for.
Well, like you said, the eclipses are important. That's why we always talk about them, but in a bigger way than ever before. And I feel like, well, there's always this kind of sensationalist news from the astrology quarters that keep people listening the same way, our our news cycles go, because that's what people want to know. But like, there are some times when it's really, it really is epic start, right? And we've already had the epic start of Pluto in Aquarius and the epic start of period 9, right? Of the women and middle-aged women being at the forefront of leadership and what is happening next in the world. And so now when we're rolling into this eclipse, it's like, okay, but that was like a great cycle. And a period 9 is 20 years, is a 20-year cycle. Well, the eclipse cycle is actually, those are every 6 months. And their nodal cycle that kind of is born from the eclipse cycle is 2.5 years. So this is one of those, again, it's important to pay attention to on the 2.5-year scale, maybe not the 180,000 years scale, but yes, the 2.5-year scale, it is important, which is this kind of, we just did the full moon in Libra, and then this will be the new moon in Aries. And so that's marking the nodal shift where the axis is Aries, Libra. Why do we care? Well, the nodals are how we decide what's important as an all-togetherness. Like, what are we moving towards? What is everybody talking about? What is driving our decisions? That's the node. And so when we're following the node, we're paying attention to what's happening and what people need and what people want. What do they want? They want to feel recognized as themselves, and they want to be on fulfilling the purpose of being themselves, right? And so that's what's coming up with these big eclipses. It's rolling us into a 2.5-year cycle where we get to learn how to be ourselves, what ourselves in leadership looks like, and then how are we allowing our purpose to unfold? How are we initiating and co-creating the thing that we came here to do? Yeah, so it's pretty fun stuff coming up.
And so we've been working together over the last few years, and I've been absorbing the influences of your studies in the different schools of astrology that you weave together. And you've been telling me for a long time, it's okay. We're finding out who we are. We're finding out what we're here to do. What is our purpose? And I'm like, that's great, because I'm really in the soup. But we're still in the soup, Monifa, and it sounds like this is more of the same. So how long has this been going on, and how much longer are we in this? What is our purpose? How do we express it? Especially where we are sovereign spirits in our midlife, which aligns with the 9th cycle that you've mentioned before, and it continues.
And it continues. The story
finish
continues. Well, I don't know.
Is there ever a finish line?
Is there ever a finish line? No. I wish I could say yes, but I was trying not to talk about it. But yeah, for about 7 years, we've been running this cycle of nurturing who we are. It started, in my opinion, about 7 years ago with the nodal shift into the Cancer Capricorn axis. So Cancer was the north node at that time. Why is that important? Like, the way you can track it. How are you feeling around 7 years ago, around 2017? How, what did you realize was in the way of being yourself? For me, it was my emotions. I was not willing to live my full expression of emotions with other people, in witness of that. And so I've seen that, and even as a society, shift into, I just had like a functional doctor slash regular doctor have a conversation about how emotions are the language of our neurological system. And so that was just like, whoa, like when did that become something people said by way of course, right?
There's hope for
Um,
us yet.
so it was kind of funny because we're growing older and we didn't realize like time was actually passing until things like this happens. Like that is not the world I grew up in. I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, emotions were taboo. If you were showing them, you were weak and you were ineffectual and you were not valued and you obviously couldn't be trusted because your emotions are everywhere. And it was all this like craziness around emotions, right? And now we're shifting into this, like you even the lessons coming into the year. So January, February were a lot of, if you don't know how you feel, you don't know who you are. Like that was kind of the beginning of the year subtext is how I would think of it. And now we're getting into this new nodal shift. And as we get introduced, I guess is a way to say it. As we get introduced, we're actually having that experience of what does it look like to get to be the catalyst for those things, and then how are we dealing with interruptions of being those things. And that is what we're really rolling into this April, is like you get to find out how you do this purpose thing on the fly.
Time to be applying what we've been
Yeah.
learning and integrating. And I know one of the other things that I love digging into with you, especially through your work with the gene keys, is working with the shadow. And the shadow isn't something to move away from or to hide or avoid, but just recognizing that when we're out of balance, is the way that I consider it. When we're out of balance, we fall into patterns of a certain nature. And so North Node,
Mm.
South Node, like it all weaves back in together in terms of recognizing where our shadow is and what we want to be moving towards.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I feel like a lot of the South Node, the what you have to pay attention to in the South Node is like kind of is the reverse. Like the North Node is what we are learning, how we are evolving into who we are more as more of ourselves. And then the South Node is kind of like what we've already experienced, what we know about that. And so there can be a shadow with the South Node. It says that you know everything because you've experienced it before. And that experience right now is that Libra energy of like community and balance and freedom and justice and what we thought of and how we thought of these things before as opposed to now. So it becomes like that conversation that we were talking about earlier of destiny versus purpose. Like, what does that look like? And really it is like kind of how much are we, that really is always the question about the South Node, is like, how much are we taking with us? How much are we reforming in the newness of the path ahead, right? And so I feel like that question is on deck. So if you haven't had it come up in your families, in your relationships, in your life, and your business, then I don't know what y'all doing. Like we're like I don't know, you must be on a remote island with I don't know, drink and with your feet up with one of those books that we were talking about earlier. Because my life is definitely expressing this. Are we going to do it like we've always done it? Or are we going to choose the openness and the freedom of the unexpected that we decided to embark on? It's big stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's big stuff. It's challenging to keep stepping into our growing edge, right? And out of our comfort zone and keep on pressing forward. Like I said, I think Pat, who's been able to be on here with us, and I can think of other friends too, such a formative point 7 years ago in 2017 when things radically shifted. I know I made a big departure. That's when I left the work that I was doing before I got into holistic health. I was definitely like, I finally, for the first time in my life, see a purpose that's bigger than me, just bigger than what paycheck do I want to bring home. And so these questions like keep on coming back, but that is it, right? We keep being challenged to get clearer and stand more firmly in what we're here to do.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point. Like the whole point of the energies is to attune us to what changes are necessary and are coming, whether we're attuned or not. And so that's the whole point for a lot of people in following astrology. What people see astrology as is like kind of this predictive, how can I be more right by knowing this? Right. And that's not really what astrology is for. So it is kind of, that's kind of always my hesitation in telling people kind of what's coming. Because to me, it's not really what's coming. It's like, what is, like, this is what is, like, what are we doing about what is? Or what are we doing with what is? This is so cool because we're talking about this with the I Ching before, because the first hexagram I'm learning, so I might be getting this wrong a little bit. Benabel Wen is the reference. If you need more like astute information, she'll give it to you. But the first hexagram, what I'm digesting is that it's really about like, what is the framework? What came already? What has been established? And the place that we're in. And the second hexagram is what is changing, what is the possibility, what is that energy that will allow for a change, and what dynamics of that change are available for us to create something different or new or from our own design. And so first of all, like, who doesn't love that? I don't know. I'm so excited about just that fact. I could be like, I'm done. Like, that by itself is everything to me, because that's the whole point of my work, is that you can't know the true outcome without calculating for change. And you need parameters to define that change by. And if you don't have those two things, you're basically just flying blind out there and hoping and wishing and praying for a different outcome with no frame of reference that is solid. And so that's my whole thing anyways. But that is that establishment versus initiating your own cycle. And so I think it's a very important part of what we have been learning through these kind of entrees into who are we. When that Aquarian age was coming into more prominence, a lot of the eclipses around Aquarius, those were the initiations into the full age, right? Which again, I was like, super long. I can't tell you. I don't know. And that feeling of, I want to say like 120 years. But yeah, so that having those experiences basically are telling us like, how are we uniquely ourselves, and how are we uniquely supporting who we are? And that actually came up already this year because of a new moon in Aquarius, right? It's also was that preference, like a reference. Like, so if you hadn't learned that lesson already, it's like, here is a 1 hour time. We're about to entering a whole age. Like, if you don't know this thing, like, you will have problems. That's the whole point of the energy. Giving you those little peeps into like, thank you. Thank you. I needed to know that. Exactly.
Yes, and with the middle of this past month, with this month that we're wrapping up, we came into Aries, which is the astrological new year, basically. And before we adopted the Gregorian calendar, the spring equinox was the beginning of the year. So in a lot of ways, we're at this initiation point, these themes of what comes first, the self and our vision, our expression in the world, like in so many different facets, which is what I love about astrology. And you're so kind as to tell me where I can see these are all coming from, but we keep getting the expression, the lessons keep coming in and reinforcing themselves. We're definitely in this place of clarity on ourselves and how we're showing up in the world right now.
Yeah. Well, and again, like it's just giving us more and more impetus to be ready for this age. Like the one that so if we're going to say Aries has a lot of numbers, and in the 64, Aries has a lot of numbers. I think, I don't know, 7, I don't know, a lot. So so the fact that the eclipse is on a specific number is telling, right? So the solar eclipse for the spring equinox, essentially, I can't really say those things as the same thing, but they kind of are, because the hexagram or the gate 51 is the hexagram that is the initiation of spring, literally, in the definition of the I Ching. And so it's really like the beginning of the beginning of the beginning. It's the initiation in gate 51. It's the agitation to initiative, the city of awakening for the gene keys, right? So this is like impetus, culmination, making things happen. It can feel like this challenge of like really even knowing, having faith that you have a purpose. And then it can, because there's a disruption, like in order for something to be initiated, there must be something that shifts. So disruption, like shifting without wanting the shift, feels like disruption or challenge, right? And so how are you letting that redefine your purpose? Or are you secure in what your purpose is? And then letting that purpose define what's really happening in that change. Like, and then that full moon that we're going to have at the end of April, that's on the 23rd, is full moon in Scorpio, which, by the way, if nobody knows, is like the queen of change. Like it's the place where change beeth, right? Like it's death,
It's the deep work. It's deep. Scorpio, we go deep.
Yeah, it goes deep. And that one is the 28. That's Adventure Challenge in the Quantum Human Design. So what we were just talking about, like, again, like that these specific numbers are the ones that came up. Mind-boggling. Then the 28 in Gene Key, purposelessness as a shadow, gift of totality, and city of immortality. Like, if that doesn't like go into your solar plexus and do a dance, like I don't know what to tell you. Right? Like I know a lot of things that astrologers say. It's like, so, well, we're always talking about purpose. Life is about purpose. Like, how can that be specific? I mean, it's only as specific as those things are repeating and repeating and repeating, and that theme keeps repeating. So the more you bring your eyes to those synchronicities of repetition is when you're noticing the pattern that things are actually built on. This is again, we were just talking about, this is how you can respond in real time effectually. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, but that's what's up, bro. We're like, out of this, are we gonna, out of fear of never being able to, like, that 28th is basically pointing at, like, you'll never find your purpose, you'll never follow through and make your purpose happen the way it should happen. And then, and you let that fear of that, shadow stifle you and take you out of the game and your doingness of your purpose. And then, or are you going to let that tell you that it's time to initiate the truth that is your purpose. And that rhythm that will allow it to come to pass. And so, like, yeah, it's like a whole, I could talk about this forever. I don't know why you keep letting me talk like that, Susie.
Well, so suffice it to say, we've got quite a month in store, and fortunately, we'll be back together coming into the end of April, so we can check in and make sure we're not slipping into hopelessness and resignation, but really seeing how that legacy can come from doing what is aligned and really stepping into our purpose. Even if we do keep having to come back to it. Didn't I learn this lesson? Okay, I'm going to learn this lesson again. Okay, lesson, let's get to work.
Yeah, and then we have
got
that
this.
fun period of Mercury retrograde to remind us in case we forgot anything, because it's also in Aries, by the way. It'll be reversing in Aries. So that basically means those lessons of who are you? How are you leading change? And are you leading change according to your purpose or according to what you think has to happen by the old information, the old establishment? Yeah, and then the Jupiter is coming up after April. We kind of need to pay attention to it because it is a long transit, and so it's one of the final, like it's the one before the last one that it'll be in there for another 20 years or so. It's entering into Gemini on May 25th. So it's just something to pay attention to because Gemini is our connection. It's how we connect, how we communicate. And like for Jupiter to be there is basically saying all growth and expansion in every way possible will happen in this facet. So everything, like what we don't want to exponentialize, in other words, what the energy is giving us a chance to do is not exponentializing communication and connection that is not reinforcing who we are, right? And so it's giving us that opportunity. I just wanted to like bring it up because it's going to be a big deal when it happens. And so if you're already kind of getting that your lessons are connected to that idea of like, are you going to keep communicating this way? Are you going to keep connecting to people who aren't in touch with who you really are and like let them tell you who you are? Is that what we're going to keep doing, or are we going to do something different? It's an honest question.
Important questions. And that's why we have this space. That's why we started this project at the beginning of the year, is because we want to build community where people are in these spaces, moving through these growing pains, coming back to these questions. And we just want to let you know, it's not just you. It's it has a hand in this too. And we are here doing our work, and we're doing it right here with you, sisters. So we're glad to have you with us.
Absolutely. That is happening.
Speaking of the work, but wait, there's more. We should give at least a passing glance to the extraordinary Byron Katie, who is so powerfully intuitive through her own life experience. She brought about this whole line of inquiry that, again, right, we go back to these very old traditions where extraordinary wisdom was available. And then we moved away from them in the name of science or, psychological inquiry. And really, when we kind of come back to our roots and really getting in touch with what is our soul asking for, it's like, oh, we knew that, and that's what I think is really fascinating. So we started out, Monifa and I said, let's read Loving What Is, which is a really great, very handy, concise exploration of Byron Katie, her coming to this awareness. And then I said, Monifa, what book are you reading? A different one? Are you reading A Mind at Home with Itself? She said, oh yeah, it's different, but it's the same. And I'm like, well, there's a lot. And she calls on, in that book, A Mind at Home with Itself, she really calls back to the Diamond Sutras. And she, in collaboration with her husband, has called in a really lovely and very kind of distilled translation of what can be a really complex text that scholars have examined for years, but how it parallels where she has arrived with her realizations, her personal epiphanies, and her work is pretty extraordinary, right? And I think it just demonstrates, Monifa, the way that cycles and patterns, there are sometimes when there are lessons that are really important, we come at them in different ways. We kind of work through the levels. Like you were saying earlier, even in evolution, there's a still point, and you've shared other examples of our cycle of evolution. There's forward motion and there's backward motion. There's being static, and it's all part of the progress. Because we feel static doesn't mean we're not moving ahead or moving in towards our outcome that we're reaching for. It just means that's where we are in the cycle, and we get to get curious to it and be present with it. And I'm sorry, that was a bit of a tirade. This is what Katie does to us. Katie leads us like, woo! So
We
brace
were
yourselves.
in the whole of the
Pick
of
up the
the
book and
circular
dive in
thinking.
next week.
Really, I feel like this is one of those that it really has to happen in conversation. And that's one of the reasons why we're kind of leaving it to the very end, because we're really hoping that you'll join us in this conversation. So buy me a coffee. If you haven't been there yet, go ahead to that verve.vision after buymeacoffee.com. Okay. So that is where we're going to be talking mostly about this, but we can at least go over like the questions a bit and kind of our interpretation of what has happened so far with our experience of the work. For me, like I know the first time I did the worksheet, I was just like, yeah, duh, like this is a no-brainer. Like, of course I'm right about this.
Of course, I've decided
And
the right thing
of
about this
course I'm right
situation.
about this. And and you know, I'm evolved, right? Like I see the other side of it. I was explaining to Susie, I feel like sometimes it feels like I'm already in that end point. And so I feel like I'm playing with this beginning point, because a lot of that work I do with the gene keys is how I'm turning that shadow into, like, because I know the other side of that possibility of whatever negativity I feel or think I'm experiencing. Now, this though is a little more confronting, because it's like making you use the word I, you know, in juxtaposition to whoever you may be complaining about or whatever circumstance you may be complaining about. And so that is like highly confronting and therefore highly shifting. So if you're ever kind of like, well, what is that supposed to mean? That's probably exactly what they're supposed to happen while you're filling out that worksheet. So we'll bring that's something that is available publicly. You can go to her website, but we'll also have it when we do the book club. We'll have that worksheet for our membership group as well, so that you can try it out before you come and ask us questions. I think it's good because having somebody else's frame of reference, I think, is always easier to see the above the fray vision viewpoint, right, of the what's going on.
Perspective is powerful, and that's what's really extraordinary about what she has made available. Is she's not like the man behind the curtain saying you have to come and work with me and I will help you release the pain that goes along with the stories that we carry because of your attachment to what you believe is true. You know, she says here, right, this worksheet I find, you know, on her website easily, but I've had friends share it with me. It's easily available on the web. She really is about giving people the tools to help them release that discomfort. And that was one of the things I held. I pulled out to read a quote from early on in the book from Loving What Is. Maybe even in the foreword, they share the words of the Greek philosopher Epictetus. You know how they are. When he said, "We are disturbed not by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens." And that right there is the foundation for Katie's inquiry. She says, so what if we don't have thoughts? What if we don't have to be in judgment about what is happening to us? What if what is simply is? And that's a real paradigm shift. I don't know about you, Monifa. Maybe you know some people who feel like everything needs to be weighed or judged or defined and classified. It's good or it's bad. It's for me or it's against me. And I always kind of get curious about how much energy we put into that reflex. I have to define this. I have to classify it. It's for me or it's against me, right? How about you?
Yeah, yeah. Like this is one of those things that it is kind of hard for me to think this way anymore, because anytime I hear the word should, I'm already like, oh, well, like that's, great, but it is what it is. Like I'm always saying stuff. It is what it be. That's one of my favorite things to say. And I think the first time I heard this concept was actually from Dr. Sue Morter, because she has this question that she asks when people are asking those really hard questions, like why did this have to happen? Why did I have to lose that person? And she has this thing that she says, where is how do you know it was supposed to happen? And it's because it did happen, right? And I feel like it's born out of this through line or concept or energy line. I feel like people, if you read Big Magic, you know what's happening. Like people aren't necessarily stealing from each other as much as they're getting the same information encoded from the information that's coming to them. And so you never know if it's like they really had this conversation or if it just was one of their downloads, right? So it's always fun to kind of play that timeline game, but it's just a game like everything else. But anyways, the point is that it always brings me back to like, okay, then if it's what should happen, then we can get back to why is it happening for me? It's the way I like to think of it. But I think the way she does the turnaround is very much that. It's that question that says, like, if I admitted that this was something that was showing me more of who I am, what is possible, what would that look like? And it's the answer to the turnaround. That's what that looks like. And it's always kind of like, oh, okay. And then there's kind of like this relief. Right. And you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, I do choose not to have that thought.
Right. What if I did let go of that? What if I freed myself of that perception or judgment or recognition? And one of the other things that really stood out to me, because I like to geek out on neuroscience and positive psychology, and this was new to me, what they shared, also coming from Loving What Is. A couple of different researchers that they call on, basically identifying a part of our brain called the interpreter, which is in that left hemisphere, leading to that right brain thinking. Something in our left cerebral hemisphere that is prone to fabricating verbal narratives that do not necessarily accord with the truth, right? So we create a story. It is a function of our brain biology that they find is widespread. It's one of those, again, like we are biological beings, there are reflexive actions. And because we are evolved beings, we can see that and say, what if that's not true? Right? Because we feel like we have to have answers. We have to fill in the blanks in order to feel like we are in control. We don't have unanswered questions, then we are in an environment where we feel we are in charge. What if we're not, and that's perfectly okay? What if we don't have to fill in all the blanks?
Wow. Yeah, so much that. This is so funny because this is literally the last time I heard this concept was also Dr. Mahdi, which is the one I was talking about earlier. And it's that he talks about it as that brain function that is predictive. And so like the way he broke that down was so ahawing for me, because it is basically what it's trying to do is like the way he describes it is predict what happened in the past, like what it means, what happened, what the past meant, right? And then what's happening in the future, what will happen, and how can I make something happen? Like it's trying to predict those things, and it's always on that job. And so if you're not putting your brain to use as the question of those things, and it's always predicting from Non-source material. It's always predicted. For those who don't know why I'm laughing.
Because who's really giving us the material? Is that coming from source? Oh, I love non-source material. I'll never think about that the same way again. I love you.
That's so fun. Yeah, so like it's not real. It's those things are what we are, the stories you make up about what the experience is. And the only thing that's real is the now experience. So if you're not sourcing from now, then you have a frame of reference that is not helpful. And that's usually where these thoughts are coming from, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And next week, when we really dig in and get in the soup, I hope you're able to join us for our book club meeting. We'll be looking at
So
more
good.
of what Katie explores in A Mind at Home with Itself, which is the unity, the fact that we are not separate, the illusion that I am I and Monifa, you are you, and that we have nothing to do with each other, right? Like breaking through all of that, breaking through the mental constructs even deeper than just our reaction to our feelings, but really digging into more of this source of discomfort and how when we release these things that don't matter, we release these things that are beyond our control, like we can just take a deep breath, right? It just feels more spacious.
Well, I love the
That's
way
it.
she does it because it's like when you hear her, like kind of some of the real conversations that are in the Loving What Is, um, you can hear the shift, right? It's not ever that, oh, I've decided to release this thought. It's always, well, can I find a reason to release this thought? Is the way she likes to say it. And it's like, oh yeah, I can find a reason, especially after going through these questions. I can find lots of reasons. Um, and then it's just kind of goes and you can feel it because the body will shift, well, if you're doing the work, you got to follow Susie and I for the other stuff that will allow you to have the awareness around your body. But it will happen either way, like whether you feel it or not, it's going to be happening when you do the process. So I think I'm so glad that we decided to do this.
Right. Just as we were kind of going through our plan and we said, no, not that one yet. This one, this feels right. And then for see above all the reasons, all the energy, all the cycles, all the lessons that are coming up. This is the tool that I'm so glad that we've got in our toolkit. And I'm glad that everybody else we're inviting to come along with us. Can't wait to hear how it's landing for you too. So let us know in the comments. Let us know if you're going to read one of the books, Loving What Is, which is a great introduction, A Mind at Home with Itself. If you want to dig deeper, you want to examine the parallels with the Diamond Sutra and really get into the juicy stuff. We'll be talking about it next week, but just to kind of start to prime your mind for that kind of expansive conversation, because we're going deep.
We're going to go in. It's going to be awesome.
I'm so excited, Monifa. I love collaborating with you. Thank you so much. This has been fun. I hope it was fun for everybody else. Be sure to let us know what you think in the comments.
Yes.
We'll see you next week at book club, and we'll see you on the last Thursday of the next month for our next conversation live stream here on YouTube and in Facebook.
See you then. Bye.